The solar farm, known to the corporate overlords as Helios Spire, was a marvel of human ingenuity. Or, at least, it was supposed to be. Dalen Voss often referred to it as the bright folly, a testament to mankind's uncanny ability to over-engineer itself into oblivion. On this particular day, the sky was a disturbing shade that could best be described as vomit comet green, courtesy of the latest atmospheric experiment gone awry in Earth's vain attempt to look pretty for the neighbors. Dalen, standing amidst the labyrinth of solar panels, scratched at the stubble on his chin and muttered to himself, "Nothing like a touch of self-destruction to keep things interesting, huh?" This is what he had signed up for, a life of irony and cosmic mishaps. "You talking to yourself again, Voss?" came a voice, smooth as a hangover. Arkin Tull, his best friend and professional bringer of sarcasm, emerged from behind a panel, wiping grease from his hands. Tull had a knack for appearing when least wanted, like an existential crisis or a bout of explosive diarrhea. "Just contemplating the futility of existence and the usual," Dalen replied. "You know how it is." "Sure do," Tull replied, grinning. "Heard the luminaries are up to something again. Rumor has it they're turning this place into something bigger than a corporate tax dodge." Dalen raised an eyebrow. "Bigger than a tax dodge? That sounds ambitious, even for them." The luminaries were a shadowy human collective allegedly dedicated to elevating humanity to a state of godhood or some other nonsense. Dalen often thought they were more likely to elevate humanity to a state of eternal embarrassment. "Yeah," Tull continued, "but this time they're being super hush-hush about it, like more secretive than a cat with a new litter of kittens." "So, a massive superweapon then," Dalen quipped, only half joking. Tull laughed, a sound that could curdle milk at 20 paces. "Wouldn't surprise me." "Hell, they could point this thing at the nearest alien star and see what shakes loose." A shiver ran through Dalen's spine, the kind you get when someone whispers the word audit. "You don't actually think they'd do something that stupid, do you?" Tull shrugged. "You know people, Voss. Give them enough tech and they'll usually find the quickest way to blow themselves up." With a sigh, Dalen turned back to the panel he was working on, trying to ignore the sense of impending doom washing over him like a lukewarm shower. "Well, I've got these myths to finish translating. Nearly there with the one about the spider who teaches humanity to weave lies or something." Tull leaned in, his expression suddenly serious, which usually meant trouble. "You do realize these myths are being broadcast, right? Not just to Earth, but out there." He gestured vaguely upwards, to the stars. Dalen paused, a screwdriver hovering over the stubborn panel. "What, like a cosmic bedtime story? More like a cosmic shitstirrer," Tull replied. "The luminaries think these myths could spark something out there." "Yeah, like unrest," Dalen mused. "Or maybe just a lot of very confused aliens." Tull chuckled darkly. "Imagine it. Somewhere in the Pegasus cluster, an alien's going to hell is a spider, and why does it want me to buy insurance?" Standing there, amidst the solar panels that hummed with a mysterious energy, Dalen couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just another boring day in the life of an underpaid philosopher-engineer. The luminaries were up to something, and that something smelled suspiciously like a cosmic prank on the universe. The wind picked up, carrying the sound of distant drills and the ever-present hum of 1,000 panels, slowly converting solar energy into the human equivalent of a flamboyant middle finger to nature. "So," Dalen said, breaking the silence, "what's your take, Tull? Think the luminaries are just full of it, or are we actually on the brink of intergalactic war over a bunch of ancient nursery rhymes?" Tull smirked, his eyes glinting with mischief. "Wouldn't be the first time humanity's done something incredibly stupid, would it?" As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the farm in shadows that seemed to stretch forever, Dalen felt an uneasy thrill. Here they were, two insignificant specks in the grand tapestry of the universe, tampering with forces they didn't understand. And wasn't that just the most human thing of all? "Well, I'm sure we'll find out soon enough," Dalen said, his voice barely hiding the nervous anticipation. "And won't that be a fun chapter for the history books?" Tull clapped him on the shoulder. "Just make sure you get my good side when they write it." They continued working in silence, the weight of their conversation hanging heavily in the air. Above them, the stars blinked into view, innocent and unaware of the chaos being orchestrated beneath them. Perhaps somewhere out there, aliens were tuning in to humanity's little broadcast, wondering who these hairless apes were and why they seemed hell-bent on making the galaxy a more interesting place. Dalen couldn't help but chuckle at the thought. "Here's to cosmic curiosity," he muttered under his breath, returning to his work with renewed determination. After all, if humanity was going to light a fire under the universe, someone had to be around to keep score. As Dalen and Tull packed up for the day, the oppressive weight of cosmic consequence still lingered, like a bad smell you couldn't quite place. They trudged towards the outpost, boots crunching on gravel, the last vestiges of sunlight giving way to the harsh, artificial glow of the settlement. "You ever wonder," Dalen said, breaking the comfortable silence, "why it's always us?" Tull laughed, a sound that echoed in the empty air. "Because we're just dumb enough to press the button and smart enough to know we shouldn't." Dalen shook his head, grinning despite himself. "Well, let's hope our luck, or lack thereof, holds out a bit longer." The outpost came into view, a collection of rusting metal and desperation held together by duct tape and the sheer force of will. Inside, they found the usual suspects: tired workers nursing weak drinks, machinery clanking like a symphony of discontent. "Voss." "Tull," a voice called out, belonging to a woman with the kind of face that looked like she could chew up and spit out nails for breakfast and probably did. "You two been causing trouble again." "Us? Cause trouble?" Dalen replied, feigning shock. "Never, we're the picture of innocence." "Yeah, and I'm the Emperor of Mars," the woman retorted, eyes narrowing playfully. "Nice to meet you, Your Majesty," Tull said with a mock bow. "How's the throne treating you?" the woman snorted, shaking her head. "Just don't get yourselves killed. I'd hate to have to break in a new pair of idiots." They settled into the routine of the outpost, the evening stretching out before them like a question mark. With the revelation of the luminaries' plans and the broadcast of human myths into the galaxy, Dalen knew that change was on the horizon, whether they were ready for it or not. As they raised a drink to another day survived, the weight of the unknown pressed down on them, a reminder that while humanity might be the butt of the universe's jokes, it was also its most unpredictable player. "To us," Tull said, raising his glass, "and whatever chaos we stir up next." Dalen clinked his glass against Tull's, a resigned smile playing on his lips. "To us," he echoed, knowing full well that the ride was just beginning. Outside, the solar farm stood silent, a giant waiting to be awakened, its purpose not yet fully realized. But soon, very soon, the universe would get a taste of humanity's penchant for mischief. And wasn't that just the punchline to the greatest cosmic joke of all? Dalen Voss stood in the control room of Helios Spire, staring at the blinking lights of the command console, as if he was trying to will them into revealing the luminaries' intentions. Beside him, his AI companion, Zephyr, hovered in a holographic display, an ethereal presence programmed to be both helpful and annoying, like a digital sibling with an affinity for sarcasm. "Zephyr, any updates on the luminaries?" Dalen asked, already dreading the smarmy response. "Ah, yes, the luminaries," Zephyr's voice dripped with artificial amusement. "That enigmatic group whose plans are more elusive than your love life, Dalen. No updates yet, unless you count the usual cryptic mumbo-jumbo." "Great," Dalen muttered. "Just what I need." The room around them buzzed with activity. Technicians hustled back and forth, their faces set in the grim determination of people who were in way over their heads but too stubborn to admit it. Outside, the green sky loomed, a constant reminder that this was still Earth, just with a fancy new paint job. "So, what's the plan, boss?" Zephyr asked, floating closer, its digital eyes twinkling with mischief. Find out what the hell the luminaries are up to before they turn this place into a cosmic punchline, Dalen said, rubbing his temples. And maybe, just maybe, keep us all from becoming a footnote in a future alien history book. Zephyr snorted, a feat for an AI. Ambitious as always. Shall we start with the superlaser test? Yeah, that sounds like a laugh, Dalen said. Let's see if we can avoid blowing ourselves to bits today. Together, they made their way through the labyrinthine corridors of the spire, dodging the occasional malfunctioning robot or overzealous safety officer. Dalen couldn't shake the feeling that if there was a god, it was probably having a good chuckle at humanity's expense. Back on the solar farm, the superlaser stood like an oversized scarecrow, its angular form cutting a menacing silhouette against the sky. The engineers had outdone themselves this time, crafting a device that looked more like a weapon of mass destruction than an energy project. Looks like something out of a bad sci-fi movie, Dalen commented, eyeing the superlaser. Zephyr chuckled. If only it came with popcorn. As they approached the control station, Tull was already there, leaning against the console with the nonchalance of someone who had long ago made peace with his own mortality. Tull, you're like a rash I just can't shake, Dalen greeted him. Good to see you too, Voss, Tull retorted. Ready to play with fire always, Dalen said. What's the status? We're about to run the test, Tull replied, gesturing to the control panel. Just need your blessing to send this puppy live. Well, I'm no priest, but let's get this over with, Dalen said, bracing himself. Zephyr, keep an eye on the data. Let me know if anything explodes, don't I always? Zephyr replied, its tone dripping with digital indignation. The superlaser hummed to life, its core glowing ominously. Panels lit up as energy surged through the behemoth, and Dalen couldn't help but think they were about to get their answer as to whether humanity's endeavor was genius or folly. Meanwhile, somewhere in the vast expanse of space, the myths being broadcast from Earth were making themselves known in ways no one could have anticipated. On a distant alien world with skies the color of old bruises, the inhabitants, reptilian beings with a penchant for bureaucracy, gathered around a viewing orb. The myths, distorted by space-time and intergalactic interference, painted humanity as divine tricksters. The aliens, ever literal in their interpretations, were in a frenzy, convinced these stories were prophecies foretelling a great change. We must prepare, one of the leaders hissed, its scales shimmering under the glow of their sun. The spider's teachings must be heeded. Yes, another agreed, its voice a low rumble. We shall weave our own path, guided by these divine tales. Back on Earth, Dalen watched the superlaser test through a monitor, the beam firing into the sky in a brilliant display of human hubris. The energy output was immense, an achievement that should have felt more like a victory and less like a prelude to disaster. Everything stable, Zephyr reported for now. Well, that's a relief, Dalen said, ever the pessimist. Though I doubt the luminaries are just stopping at a light show, Tull grinned. You know, if this was a movie, this is where the aliens would show up to tell us we're messing with things we don't understand. Well, they better get in line, Dalen replied dryly. Plenty of people here have already told us that. As if on cue, a commotion broke out among the technicians, a series of alarms blaring that sent everyone into a frenzy. Dalen, Tull, and Zephyr rushed to the source, finding a tech waving a printout like a flag of surrender. Problem? Dalen asked, though he already knew the answer. We're getting strange readings from off-world, the tech said, eyes wide. It's like someone's trying to communicate. Great, just what we needed, Dalen muttered. Alien pen pals, should we answer? Tull asked, raising an eyebrow. Depends, Dalen said. How do you feel about starting an intergalactic incident? Better than the usual paperwork, Tull quipped. Zephyr, ever the voice of reason, or at least a reasonable facsimile, interjected. Perhaps we should decode the message first. Ensure it's not just cosmic spam. Fine, Dalen said, nodding to the tech. Get on it, and let's see what our new friends have to say. As the tech worked, Dalen couldn't help but feel they were on the precipice of something much larger than a simple energy test. The myths were out there, stirring the pot in ways no one had predicted. And if there was one thing Dalen had learned, it was that the universe loved a good joke at humanity's expense. Hours later, the decoded message came through, a garbled transmission filled with clicks, hisses, and a language that seemed more like an avant-garde sound experiment than speech. Zephyr translated as best it could, piecing together bits and likely making up the rest. "They're calling us the Weavers," Zephyr said, amusement evident in its tone. "Seems they think our myths are divine teachings." Dalen pinched the bridge of his nose, suppressing a groan. "Terrific. We're cosmic deities now. All hail the mighty humans, messengers of confusion. Hey, maybe we can start a cult," Tull suggested. "I'll be the treasurer, only if you promise not to embezzle the tithe," Dalen shot back. The message ended with what Zephyr interpreted as a pledge of allegiance or a declaration of war. Honestly, it could go either way. Not exactly comforting, but Dalen had given up on comfort about the same time he'd signed up for this gig. "Looks like our myths are causing more trouble than we thought," Dalen said, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "We need to figure out what the luminaries are really after." "Agreed," Tull said. "Because right now it feels like we're chasing shadows, or becoming them," Dalen added, turning back to the console. Somewhere out there, the universe was sitting back with a front row seat to humanity's latest antics. And here they were, two fools in the symphony of chaos, trying to make sense of it all. If nothing else, it promised to be one hell of a ride. As the night wore on and the energy from the test dissipated into the cosmos, Dalen and Tull found themselves alone in the control room, pondering the implications of their unintended broadcast. "Think they'll come for us?" Tull asked, breaking the silence. "Probably," Dalen replied. "Wouldn't you if you thought a bunch of mythical bastards were out to change your world?" "Good point," Tull conceded. "So what's next?" "Next, we try to keep our heads down and figure out what the luminaries want before they make things worse," Dalen said, leaning back in his chair. "And if they do make it worse," Tull pressed. Dalen sighed. "Then we improvise. Humanity's always been good at that, right?" Tull laughed, a sound equal parts amusement and resignation. "Yeah, we might just be the galaxy's best improvisers." As they sat there contemplating their next move, the weight of their actions settling on their shoulders, Dalen couldn't help but smile. Maybe they were in over their heads, but if the universe was going to throw down the gauntlet, then they'd damn well pick it up. "Here's to cosmic curiosity," Dalen said, raising an imaginary glass. "To cosmic curiosity," Tull echoed, smirking. And with that they got back to work, because if there was one thing they both understood, it was that the universe wasn't going to wait for them to catch up. Let the chaos begin. Dalen Voss paced the control room like a caged animal, his eyes darting between the blinking lights of the command console and the green sky visible through the narrow windows. Somewhere out there in the vastness of space, humanity's little myths were stirring up more trouble than a drunk at an intergalactic peace conference. He was pretty sure someone or something was laughing at them. Probably the universe itself. "Voss, you're going to wear a groove in the floor if you keep that up," Tull quipped from his post, feet kicked up on the console like he owned the place. "Great, maybe I'll trip over it and break my neck," Dalen shot back. "Save us all a lot of hassle." Zephyr, ever the cheerful AI companion, floated between them, digital eyes flickering with amusement. "If it's any consolation, the odds of tripping on a self-made groove are statistically low." "Always the optimist, Zephyr," Dalen muttered, rubbing his temples. "How's that alien pen pal project coming along?" "Still decoding," Zephyr replied, with the patience of a saint, or a machine that couldn't comprehend impatience. "But it's clear those scaly bureaucrats out there are losing their collective minds over our divine tales." "Yeah, we could use a few less divine tales and a few more divine interventions," Dalen grumbled, glancing at Tull. "Got any bright ideas on how to get the luminaries to spill their guts?" Tull shrugged, a picture of casual indifference. "I dunno, maybe ask nicely, or we could set up a fake cult and see who bites first." "Tempting," Dalen said, "but I'd rather not end up running from a mob of zealots. A voice crackled over the intercom, interrupting their brainstorming session. "Voss, Tull, get down here. We've got a situation," Dalen sighed, exchanging a look with Tull. "What now?" "Guess we're about to find out," Tull said, pushing off from the console with a groan. "Let's go play hero." They navigated the maze of corridors with practiced ease, dodging the occasional malfunctioning robot and the ever-present aroma of burnt coffee. When they arrived at the luminaries' meeting room, it was already in uproar. Faces twisted with suspicion and fear, like a pack of hyenas faced with a lion in the savannah, if that lion had a penchant for weaving cosmic stories. Dalen took a deep breath, plastering on a smile that could have been mistaken for genuine if you squinted hard enough. "All right, what's got everyone's knickers in a twist?" A woman, Dr. Zara, sharp as a blade and twice as dangerous, stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "The luminaries have called for a vote. They want to decide whether to put a halt on the Superlaser project in light of these alien uprisings." Tull snorted. "Ah, democracy at its finest. When in doubt, pass the buck." Zara glared at him. "This is serious, Tull. If the luminaries pull the plug, we're stuck with a half-baked mess and a solar farm full of very expensive scrap metal. And potentially the wrath of some very pissed-off aliens," Dalen added helpfully. "Which, you know, I'd prefer to avoid." The room erupted into chaos once more, everyone talking over each other, voices a cacophony of paranoia and self-preservation. Dalen could feel the temperature rising, the air thick with impending disaster. He raised his hands, calling for silence. "Listen, maybe this isn't such a bad thing. Maybe it's time we figure out exactly what the luminaries are trying to achieve before we all end up cosmic debris." Zara crossed her arms, skepticism radiating from her. "And you have a plan?" Dalen hesitated. "Well, not exactly. More like a vague idea wrapped in some wishful thinking." Tull stepped in, grinning. "That's more than we usually have to work with, so count me in," Zephyr interjected, hovering close. "Perhaps the uprisings aren't just a complication but an opportunity. Some see them as a way to destabilize oppressive regimes. Maybe the luminaries have their fingers in more pies than we thought." The room fell silent, the weight of Zephyr's words settling over them like an unwanted guest. Dalen nodded slowly, the pieces starting to form a picture that was equal parts terrifying and intriguing. "So, you're saying they might be using this chaos to leverage power?" Dalen mused, rubbing his chin. Tull chuckled darkly. "Well, if that doesn't sound like typical human behavior, I don't know what does." Zara frowned, clearly torn. "If that's true, we need to know for sure. We can't just keep stumbling around in the dark." "Agreed," Dalen said, feeling the familiar flicker of determination in his gut. "But we need allies, people we can trust to help us dig into this without tipping our hand." Tull raised an eyebrow. "And where exactly do you plan on finding these trustworthy souls? Last I checked, honesty wasn't exactly in high demand around here." Dalen offered a tight smile. "Sometimes you gotta make do with the devils you know." They spent the next hour hashing out a plan, the room filled with the low hum of conspiracy and caffeine-fueled determination. By the end, Dalen felt like he'd aged a decade, but at least they had a direction, sort of. "All right," he said, glancing around at the weary but resolute faces. "We need to split up. Tull, I need you to reach out to your contacts. See if you can sniff out any dissent among the luminaries." "You got it," Tull said, giving a mock salute before heading out with the swagger of someone who thrived on uncertainty. "Zara," Dalen continued, "I need you to keep an eye on the techs. See if you can find anything in their data that points to what the luminaries are really after." She nodded, her expression one of grim determination. "I'll do my best." "And Zephyr," Dalen said, turning to the AI, "keep monitoring the alien communications. If there's any chance they are planning something big, I want to know about it." "Of course, Dalen," Zephyr replied, digital eyes narrowing in concentration. "Wouldn't want to miss the grand finale." With their marching orders given, Dalen took a moment to collect his thoughts. The stakes were higher than ever, and the weight of it all was starting to feel like an anchor around his neck. But if they could pull this off, maybe there was a chance to salvage something good out of this cosmic mess. As he stepped out into the corridor, the echo of his footsteps a lonely sound against the sterile walls, Dalen couldn't help but wonder if they were doing the right thing. But then, when had right ever been the same as easy? Sometimes, he mused, you just had to trust the roll of the dice and pray you didn't crap out. The hours dragged by, each minute stretching into an eternity as Dalen waited for word from Tull and Zara. He tried to distract himself with mindless tasks, organizing data, double-checking security logs, but his mind kept drifting back to the chaos they'd inadvertently unleashed. By the time Tull finally returned, Dalen was practically climbing the walls with impatience. Tull's expression was unreadable as he took a seat opposite Dalen, hands steepled thoughtfully. "Well," Dalen prompted, barely able to contain himself. "What you find?" Tull grinned, a wolfish glint in his eyes. "Turns out there's more than a few luminaries who aren't thrilled about the current direction. Seems like some folks think a little chaos might be just what the doctor ordered to shake things up." Dalen felt a flicker of hope, quickly dampened by suspicion. "And what's their angle? Everyone's got one." Tull shrugged. "Depends who you ask. Some think the luminaries are trying to play kingmaker with these uprisings, positioning themselves to step in and take control once the dust settles." "Of course," Dalen muttered. "Nothing like a good power vacuum to bring out the best in people." "Exactly," Tull said, leaning back with a satisfied air. "But the dissenters aren't stupid. They know they'll need allies when the chips are down. And they're willing to throw in with us?" Dalen asked, trying and failing to mask his skepticism. Tull nodded. "They figure we've got as much to lose as they do. Plus, we've got a certain reputation for getting things done." Dalen snorted. "Yeah, if by getting things done you mean stirring up a hornet's nest." Tull chuckled. "Hey, whatever works, right?" Before Dalen could respond, Zara appeared, looking more bedraggled than he'd ever seen her. She collapsed into a chair, rubbing her temples with a weary hand. "I've been through the data," she said, her voice hoarse with fatigue. "There's definitely something weird going on. The luminaries are diverting resources to a project I can't get any details on. Everything's locked down tighter than a miser's vault." "Great," Dalen said, sarcasm lacing his tone. "Just what we needed, another mystery." Zara shook her head. "It's more than that. If they're hiding something this big, it means they're planning on making a move soon. We might not have as much time as we thought." Dalen cursed under his breath, the weight of it all pressing down on him. It felt like they were standing on a precipice, the ground crumbling beneath their feet, and he was damn sure not ready to take that plunge. "Then we need to move fast," he said, determination hardening his voice. "We've got potential allies, we've got suspicious activity, and we've got a ticking clock." Tull nodded, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. "I always knew we'd end up saving the world one day, even if we have to drag it kicking and screaming." "Wouldn't have it any other way," Dalen replied, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. As they finalized their plans, Dalen couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the cusp of something monumental. The universe might have been set on making humanity a cosmic punchline, but they'd be damned if they didn't at least try to write their own ending. "Here's to cosmic chaos," Dalen said, raising an imaginary glass once more. "To cosmic chaos," Tull and Zara echoed, their voices resolute. And with that, they set their course, ready to dive headfirst into the abyss. Because if there was one thing they all agreed on, it was that, whatever lay ahead, they sure as hell weren't going down without a fight. Dalen stood in the dimly lit control room of Helios Spire, his mind doing somersaults over the mess they found themselves in. The luminaries' grip on sanity was slipping faster than a greased ferret, and everyone was left holding their breaths, waiting for the other shoe or meteor to drop. He glanced out at the green-tinged sky, wondering if anyone had ever thought it looked pretty. Not that it mattered. Aesthetics took a backseat to survival, and right now they were barely hanging onto the wheel. "Hey, Dale," Tull called, breaking Dalen's reverie as he strolled in with that insufferable, all-knowing grin. "You look like someone just told you your last meal was a salad." If only it were that simple, Dalen muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. Everything's going to hell in a handbasket, and the luminaries are out there debating ethics like they've got all the time in the world. Ah, ethics, Tull said, flopping into a chair. Great for philosophical debates, not so great for keeping us from getting vaporized. Dalen shot him a glare, though it lacked real venom. You heard anything useful from your new friends? Tull shrugged, looking like a man with a weighty secret and not nearly enough time for a confessional booth. The luminaries are split. Some are sticking with the plan, hoping to play puppet master with the uprisings. Others are starting to wonder if they've signed up for a one-way trip to cosmic miscalculation land. They're not the only ones, Dalen said, frowning. This whole thing stinks worse than spaceport fish stew, and I'm starting to think we're pawns in someone else's game. You say that like it's a surprise, Tull replied. We're always pawns. Sometimes we're just the pawns that bite back. True, Dalen conceded. But now it feels like we're biting off more than we can chew. Their conversation was interrupted by the cheerful hum of Zephyr, their AI companion appearing with a digital sparkle. I've intercepted some alien communications, Zephyr said, her holographic eyes wide with excitement. Seems they are as fed up with the divine tales as we are. They might be looking for allies. Allies, huh? Dalen mused. Or scapegoats. Either way, Tull interjected, it's an opportunity. We can use it to poke holes in the luminaries' shiny plan, or to get our heads blown off, Dalen added. Risk, meet reward, Tull said with a nonchalant shrug. Dalen sighed. It was a risk, sure, but what choice did they have? The ethical implications of their actions weighed heavily on his conscience. Supporting the luminaries felt like signing a deal with the devil, but the alien rebels were an enigma wrapped in a cosmic riddle. The room was silent, each word a ticking bomb waiting to go off. Dalen knew he had to choose a side, and fast. The concept of a middle ground was about as real as a politician's promise. Maybe we're looking at this the wrong way, Dalen finally said, breaking the silence. Instead of choosing a side, maybe we need to focus on what's right. Hell, maybe we need to figure out what right even means anymore. A philosophical conundrum, Zephyr quipped. In the middle of a potential interstellar war, what could possibly go wrong? Everything, Tull said. Which is why we need to be smart about this. Zara entered, her eyes carrying bags that looked ready to burst. Got more data, she said, dropping a bundle of files onto the table. And a headache bigger than Mount Olympus. What's the verdict? Dalen asked, eyeing the pile like it might spring to life and bite him. The luminaries are hiding something big, Zara replied, her voice a mixture of frustration and intrigue. Something that could change everything. Change everything, Dalen echoed, shaking his head. Why does that sound like a recipe for disaster? Because it is, Tull said. But we're already neck-deep in this soup, might as well see how it ends. Or try to change the ending, Dalen said softly. If we can. Zara glanced between them, her expression skeptical. You're seriously considering working with the aliens or against the luminaries, or both? Probably, Dalen admitted. But we need to know what we're dealing with first. And figure out who's playing who, Tull added. Zephyr's digital eyes sparkled again. In that case, I'll keep digging. There's bound to be something in their communications we can use. Good, Dalen said. We'll need every advantage we can get. Assuming we don't get blown to bits first, Tull said, his tone almost cheerful. Always the optimist, Dalen replied wryly. With their plan, or lack thereof, somewhat solidified, Dalen felt a little better, though not by much. The weight of their situation was a constant pressure, like a particularly vindictive elephant sitting on his chest. Let's get to work, he said finally, the words a call to arms more than anything else. They spent the next few hours poring over data, piecing together the fragmented puzzle that was their current predicament. The luminaries were a fractured collective, their control slipping as internal debates over ethics and morality raged like wildfires. As the hours ticked by, Dalen felt the tension in the room mount. Every new piece of information added another layer to the already complex web they were weaving. It was enough to make a person's brain feel like it was being wrung out like a wet dish rag. So what's the plan? Zara asked eventually, her voice cutting through the haze of fatigue and caffeine. Keep digging, Dalen said. We need more intel before we make a move. The luminaries are hiding something big, and until we know what it is, we're flying blind. And if we find out they're planning something catastrophic, Tull asked. Then we stop them, Dalen replied, his tone resolute. Just like that, Zara said, arching an eyebrow. Just like that, Dalen confirmed. Because if they are planning something catastrophic, then they are already a threat to everyone. The room fell silent again, each of them lost in their thoughts. The weight of the situation was a tangible thing, pressing down on them with an intensity that was impossible to ignore. What a mess, Tull said finally, breaking the silence. That's one way to put it, Dalen replied. Got any other bright ideas? Zara asked, her tone half teasing, half serious. Not yet, Dalen admitted. But give me time. I'm sure I'll come up with something. Let's hope it's sooner rather than later, Tull said. Agreed, Dalen said. Because right now, time's about the only thing we don't have in spades. They returned to their respective tasks, each of them determined to find the answers they desperately needed. As the hours slipped by, Dalen felt a sense of urgency building in his chest, a knot of anxiety that refused to be ignored. He knew they were running out of time, knew they needed to find a way to tip the scales in their favor before the luminaries, or the aliens, or both, moved forward with whatever plans they had. But for now, all they could do was keep digging, keep searching for the pieces of the puzzle that would reveal the truth, and hope that when the time came, they'd be ready to face whatever was coming their way. The control room was humming with the sort of anticipation that usually prefaced a disaster. Dalen could almost hear the proverbial axe swinging, and not just any axe, an alien axe, likely with unnecessary spikes and a glowing handle to make sure you knew it was otherworldly as it sliced your head off. The green-tinted sky, once just another cosmic oddity, now seemed like an ominous curtain, hiding what was likely to be their doom. Zephyr, show me the status, Dalen commanded, pulling himself from the contemplation of his likely demise. Zephyr, their ever-cheerful AI, flickered into being with her trademark digital sparkle, like the universe's most optimistic glitch. Currently, the facility is experiencing moderate tremors of undetermined origin. However, based on the increasing intensity and the fact that it's not happy Ior, I'd say we've got incoming, Dalen sighed. Fantastic. Are we talking mild inconvenience or grab your ankles and kiss them goodbye kind of incoming? Tull, lounging at his post as if he hadn't a care in the world, snorted. Odds are on the latter. I'd start limbering up. Outside, the solar farm stretched like a field of metal sunflowers, each petal a panel hungry for any stray photon. But the superlaser was the crown jewel, its ominous silhouette looming like the universe's most dangerous scarecrow. The aliens knew it too, which made it the juiciest target this side of the galaxy. Zephyr's holographic eyes widened. Confirmed, a fleet of alien vessels breaking through the atmosphere. They're aiming straight for us. Of course they are, Dalen muttered. Why wouldn't they? It's not like there's anything more interesting around here, like a black hole or a space taco stand. Zara burst into the room, looking like she'd just gone 3 rounds with a hyperactive octopus. We've got a problem, she said, unnecessarily. Just the one, Tull quipped. I'm impressed, Dalen rubbed his temples. All right, priority is securing the superlaser. We can't let it fall into their hands, or tentacles, Tull added. Whatever aliens use. Right, Dalen said. Zephyr, any idea how long we've got before they are knocking on our door? Based on their speed and trajectory, approximately 15 minutes, Zephyr replied, sounding disturbingly chipper about the impending invasion. Give or take a cosmic sneeze. Plenty of time, Tull said, standing and stretching. I'll go put the kettle on. No tea, Tull. We need action, not Earl Grey, Dalen snapped. Zara, see if you can make sense of that data you found. We need to know what the luminaries are planning, or we're just shooting in the dark. On it, Zara said, already diving into her console. Dalen took a deep breath. It was time to see if all those hours of strategy games had been worth it. Zephyr, can we reroute some power from the auxiliary systems to boost our shields? Certainly, though it might mean sacrificing some non-essential functions, Zephyr announced, a hint of mischief in her tone. Like showers and coffee machines, Tull groaned. Now that's just cruel. We'll manage, Dalen said. Let's make sure we're not vaporized first, then we can worry about hygiene. The control room buzzed with activity, everyone moving with the purpose of ants who just discovered their nest was on fire. Outside, the first alien ships pierced the green clouds, sleek and menacing. They were the sort of craft designed by beings who clearly thought subtlety was overrated. We need to get to the superlaser, Dalen said, urgency lacing his voice. If they get their hands on it, we're done for. You always know how to motivate, Tull said, grabbing a plasma rifle. Let's go say hello. The journey to the solar farm was a chaotic blur of alarms and flashing lights. The facility shook under the bombardment, each impact a rude reminder that they were very much in the firing line. Dalen led the way, heart pounding, Tull and Zara flanking him like a pair of mismatched bookends. Zephyr hummed along, her holographic form flickering slightly as she maintained comms. As they reached the farm, Dalen took in the sight of the superlaser, its metallic surfaces gleaming dully. It was as imposing as ever, a testament to human ingenuity or hubris, depending on your mood. Right, Dalen said, surveying the scene. Zephyr, can you activate it remotely, or do we need to do the whole manual override dance? I can activate it, Zephyr confirmed, but I'd recommend manual control to ensure we don't accidentally vaporize ourselves. That would be, what's the term, anticlimactic. That's one word for it, Tull agreed. The ground shook violently, a not-so-gentle nudge from their alien visitors. The sky was a dizzying display of green and fire, the alien ships dancing around them with unsettling grace. Zara, what's the status on that data? Dalen called out as they scrambled towards the superlaser's control hub. Still decoding, Zara replied, irritation clear in her voice. This is like trying to decipher hieroglyphs with a migraine. Keep at it, Dalen said. We need every edge we can get. The superlaser's control hub was a cramped space, filled with levers and buttons that screamed experimental more than user-friendly. Dalen slid into the seat, hands moving over the controls with a familiarity that was almost comforting. Ready when you are, boss, Tull said, positioning himself by the entrance, rifle ready. Let's light them up, Dalen said, his voice a mix of nerves and resolve. Zephyr's holographic display flickered, showing the alien ships swarming above them. It was like watching a particularly aggressive swarm of bees, if bees had advanced weaponry and a penchant for destruction. Activating targeting system, Dalen mumbled, fingers flying over the controls. The superlaser hummed to life, a deep, resonant thrum that vibrated through the air. Target acquired, Zephyr announced, her voice uncharacteristically solemn. Ready to fire on your command. Dalen hesitated, the weight of the decision heavy in his chest. Firing the superlaser was like opening Pandora's box. There'd be no closing it once it was done. Fire, he said, the word tearing itself from his throat. The superlaser erupted, a beam of searing light slicing through the air with devastating precision. It was beautiful in a way, an awe-inspiring testament to human capability, even as it wrought destruction. The alien ships twisted and turned, trying to evade the beam's wrath, but one by one they fell, plummeting towards the ground in fiery spirals. It was a sight that would have been more gratifying if Dalen didn't know they'd be back. Aliens were like bad habits. They had a way of returning even after you thought you'd gotten rid of them. We did it, Zara said, disbelief in her voice. For now, Dalen replied. But they'll regroup. We need to make this count. He turned to Zephyr. Any chance we can use this lull to get more intel on the luminaries? Zephyr nodded, her eyes brightening. Already on it. If they're planning something, they won't be able to hide it for long. Dalen leaned back, exhaustion washing over him. They'd managed to repel the first wave, but the reality was stark. They were still woefully unprepared. The luminaries were playing a dangerous game and the aliens weren't backing down. "How's the data coming, Zara?" Dalen asked, hoping for a silver lining. "Got something," Zara said, her eyes scanning the screen. "Looks like the luminaries have a failsafe, something called Project Nightfall. No details, just ominous naming. Wouldn't be surprised if it involves us turning into dust. Always nice to know we're expendable," Dalen muttered. "Join the club," Tull said, managing a grin. "We've got jackets." The facility shuddered again, and Dalen knew it was only a matter of time before the aliens returned with reinforcements. They were persistent, like a cosmic cockroach infestation. "Then we need to be ready," Dalen said. "Find out everything you can about Project Nightfall. If it's a threat, we need to neutralize it." "On it," Zara said, determination in her eyes. Dalen took a moment to consider their options. They were standing on a precipice, the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. And yet, amidst the chaos, he couldn't help but find a grim humor in it all. Here they were, just a ragtag bunch trying to hold the line against forces that would have made lesser people crumble. But they weren't lesser people. They were stubborn, resilient, and just crazy enough to believe they could make a difference. "All right," Dalen said, rallying his team. "Let's get back to work. We've got a planet to save." "Again," Tull added with a smirk. "Again," Dalen agreed, a small smile forming despite the circumstances. They were far from out of the woods, but as Dalen looked around at his makeshift family, he felt a flicker of hope. It was a small, fragile thing, but it was there. And sometimes, in the darkest of times, a flicker was all you needed to keep going. The battle was far from over, but Dalen knew one thing for certain: they wouldn't go down without a fight. Not today. Not ever. Dalen Voss stood in the control room of Helios Spire, surrounded by chaos and the gentle hum of impending doom. The alien ships were a persistent problem, like that one rash that never quite goes away, no matter how much ointment you apply. He took a moment to appreciate the absurdity of his situation before flinging himself back into the fray. "So, what's next on our exciting agenda of not dying horribly?" Tull asked, lounging against a console like a man with nowhere better to be. Because there wasn't, considering the alternatives involved disintegration or worse. "Turns out we've got friends," Dalen replied, the words tasting as foreign as a Martian delicacy. "Or at least frenemies. Some of those aliens out there aren't thrilled with the whole 'let's destroy the humans' narrative." "Rebels, huh?" Zara said, her fingers still clattering over the keys, trying to wring secrets from the luminaries' data like a particularly stubborn sponge. "Apparently the divine tales they're so worked up about are actually a call for unity," Dalen explained, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Who knew interspecies cumbayas could be a thing? So they want to join forces." "What, hold hands and sing around the superlacer?" Tull asked, cocking an eyebrow. "Not quite," Dalen said, "but they're willing to help us dismantle the luminaries' grip. Something about not wanting their own kind to keep being pawns in a cosmic chess game." "Sounds too good to be true," Zara muttered, narrowing her eyes at the screen. "Who leads these rebels? Some alien version of George Washington? More like an alien version of your weird uncle who thinks he's a prophet," Zephyr interjected with a digital grin. "Their leader goes by the name Irid, and he's eccentric, even by their standards." "Irid, huh?" Tull said. "Sounds like a soap brand. Irid for when you need intergalactic freshness." "Jokes aside," Dalen said, "we need to take this seriously. If they are genuine, this could be the break we need." The facility shook again, punctuating his point with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. The alien ships continued their aggressive dance outside, a reminder that time was a luxury they couldn't afford. "What's the plan then, fearless leader?" Tull asked, sarcasm layered with genuine curiosity. "We meet with Irid," Dalen said, his eyes narrowing as he mapped out possibilities in his mind. "If he's on the level, we work together to undermine the luminaries. If not, well, we can always vaporize him. Peaceful diplomacy with a side of potential violence," Zara said, nodding approvingly. "Sounds like a plan." "Zephyr, can you patch us through to Irid?" Dalen asked, already feeling the weight of the gamble they were about to take. "Connecting now," Zephyr replied, her holographic display blipping as she established a secure line. After a moment of nerve-wracking silence, the screen flickered to life, revealing Irid. He looked like someone had mashed together every stereotype of an alien leader: regal robes, a crown-like headgear, and an expression that screamed, "I know something you don't." "Greetings, humans," Irid said, his voice resonant and oddly comforting. "I am Irid, leader of the Unified Path. We have much to discuss." "Great, let's skip the pleasantries," Dalen said. "You help us dismantle the Luminaries' control, and in return we ensure your people aren't turned into cosmic roadkill. Deal?" Irid chuckled, a sound like wind chimes caught in a gale. "Direct. I like that. Yes, we have a common goal. The Luminaries have twisted our history, sowing division where there should be harmony. We propose an alliance. How exactly do you plan to help?" Zara asked, skepticism tightly wound in her tone. "We have access to their encrypted communications," Irid said, an alien equivalent of a smirk appearing on his face. "Information is power, and right now we have plenty of it." "Information's good," Tull said. "But can you actually fight?" "Our ships are prepared to engage," Irid replied. "But our strength lies in our ability to disrupt their plans from within. The Luminaries' faith in their secrecy is their greatest weakness." "All right," Dalen said, feeling a cautious optimism creeping in. "Give us the intel and we'll coordinate our efforts. But if you double-cross us—" "Mutual annihilation isn't in my interest," Irid said, cutting him off. "I assure you our alliance is genuine. The Luminaries must fall." The call ended, leaving Dalen with a sense of unexpected partnership. It was a dangerous, delicate dance they were starting, but the alternative was certain destruction. "Well," Zara said, breaking the silence. "Another day, another unholy alliance. I just hope we don't end up regretting this," Dalen said, pushing himself away from the console. "But for now, it's our best shot." "Zephyr, you get all that?" Tull asked, keeping an eye on the flashing lights that screamed urgent in a dozen colors. "Every word," Zephyr confirmed. "I'll coordinate with Irid's tech team to ensure we're synchronized." "Good," Dalen said, feeling the pressure of leadership settling over him like an ill-fitting coat. "Let's get to work. We've got a lot to do, and not much time to do it." The team moved in a synchronized dance of chaos, each person knowing their role and executing it with practiced precision. The aliens might have been an unknown element, but there was a shared understanding that desperation bred cooperation. As the minutes ticked by, the alien rebels' ships began to maneuver, taking calculated positions against the larger luminary fleet. Lines were drawn, and the stage was set for what could either be a glorious victory or a devastating defeat. "All right, everyone," Dalen announced, standing tall amid the chaos. "We're about to test just how well humans and aliens can work together without blowing each other up. Think of it as a cosmic team-building exercise," Tull said, checking his plasma rifle with a practiced air. "With a lot more at stake than who gets the biggest slice of cake," Zara added, her fingers dancing over the console. The screen lit up with tactical data from Irid's network, revealing positions, weaknesses, and potential strategies. It was a treasure trove of information that could turn the tide if used correctly. "Zephyr, what's our best move here?" Dalen asked, scanning the data as fast as his eyes could track. "Hit them where it hurts," Zephyr replied. "They've fortified key positions, but their communications hub is vulnerable. Take it out and their coordination crumbles." "Simple plan, then," Dalen said, his voice carrying a note of grim determination. "We hit the hub, disrupt their network, and let Irid's forces take advantage." "And if they betray us?" Zara asked, her eyes flicking up to meet his. "Then we improvise," Dalen said. "And hope we're better at it than they are." The facility shuddered once more, the alien ships outside continuing their relentless assault. It was a reminder that they were still in the thick of it, with no promises of survival. "All right, everyone," Dalen said, rallying his makeshift family. "This is it. Let's show them what humans and aliens can do when we stop trying to kill each other. Here's to not dying," Tull said, saluting with his rifle. "And to making a difference one way or another," Zara added, a fierce light in her eyes. The control room thrummed with energy, anticipation buzzing through the air. It was a moment of unity, however fragile, and Dalen couldn't help but feel a swell of pride for the strange, eclectic group he called his team. "Let's get to it then," Dalen said, leading the way toward their uncertain future. Together, humans and aliens would face the luminaries, armed with nothing more than hope, determination, and a stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The odds were steep, the stakes astronomical, but in this moment Dalen believed they could pull it off. They had to. The battle was far from over, but with new allies and a shared purpose, Dalen felt a flicker of hope, a flicker that, with luck, might just be enough to light their way through the coming storm. Dalen stood at the helm of chaos, feeling like a captain navigating a ship made of explosives through a sea of fire. The control room buzzed with frantic energy, lights blinking like a cosmic disco while the superlaser loomed ominously in the background, a reminder of just how quickly things could go from bad to catastrophic. "So, the plan's simple," Dalen said, injecting as much confidence into his voice as he could muster. "We deactivate the superlaser, convince the luminaries that their whole Divine Tales broadcast is about as useful as a solar-powered flashlight, and then we all go out for celebratory drinks. Yeah, because nothing says job well done like getting hammered with the aliens who almost vaporized us," Tull chimed in, a cynical grin plastered on his face as he fiddled with his plasma rifle. "Hey, if they're buying, I'm drinking," Zara quipped, her fingers still flying over the console. The woman could type faster than a caffeinated squirt, and Dalen was grateful for it. "Zephyr, status update," Dalen called out, turning his attention to their resident AI, who was currently manifesting as a holographic cube spinning with data. "We've got Irid's forces in position," Zephyr announced, her voice crisp and reassuringly smug. "They're ready to create a distraction, but we'll need to time this perfectly. One slip-up and we're all cosmic dust." "Right, no pressure then," Dalen muttered, taking a deep breath. "Tell Irid to start his move on my signal." With a nod from Zara, who was translating everything into alien speak, Dalen felt a flicker of hope. It was a fragile, stupid thing, but right now it was all they had. The facility shuddered like a drunk on a bender, courtesy of another alien bombardment. Dalen imagined those ships outside, sleek and deadly, all primed to turn Helios Spire into an interstellar pancake. "What a glorious day to die," Tull muttered, checking his gear with practiced efficiency. "If we're lucky, we might even go down in history." "If we survive, I'm writing the memoir," Zara said, a wicked gleam in her eye. Working title: "We saved the galaxy and all we got was this lousy hangover." "Save the manuscript for later," Dalen said, his gaze fixed on the tactical display. "Right now, we've got a universe to save." As if on cue, Zephyr's holographic form flickered, data pouring across her surface like a digital waterfall. "Irid's forces are commencing their diversionary tactics," she reported. "Should keep the Luminaries' fleet occupied long enough for us to work our magic." Dalen nodded, the weight of impossible odds pressing against him. "All right, let's do this." "Zephyr, shut down the superlaser's power grid on my mark." The plan was almost comically straightforward. Cut the power, disable the weapon, and make the luminaries rethink their career choices. If it worked, they'd be heroes. If it didn't, well, they'd be a cautionary tale told around future campfires, assuming there were any humans left to tell it. "Ready when you are, boss," Zara said, hands poised over the console like a pianist about to strike the opening chord of a symphony. Dalen took a deep breath, the gravity of the moment weighing him down like lead boots. "Now, Zephyr." Lights dimmed and flickered as the power grid began to shut down, the superlaser groaning in protest like a beast being put to sleep. The control room's hum shifted to an eerie silence, punctuated by the occasional beep of recalibrating systems. "System shutdown initiated," Zephyr confirmed, her voice tinged with satisfaction. Superlacer is offline. Let's hope it stays that way, Tull muttered, his eyes scanning for any signs of betrayal from their newfound allies. Outside, the alien rebels executed their part of the plan with precision, drawing the luminaries' attention like moths to a flame. Ships engaged in a chaotic ballet of lasers and maneuvers, each move calculated to maximize confusion and minimize actual damage. In the control room, Dalen felt the tension ease, if only slightly. "All right, next step," he said, turning to face the team. "Time to talk sense into the luminaries. Or at least talk them to death," Zara quipped, a mischievous twinkle in her eye. They opened a comms link to the luminaries' fleet, the screen flickering to life with the image of a rather disgruntled alien commander. He had the kind of face that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else, doing anything else than dealing with humans at this particular moment. "Ah, Commander Glowerface," Dalen greeted, injecting false cheer into his voice. "Lovely day for a chat, isn't it? What do you want, human?" the commander snapped, his expression as inviting as a rabid space weasel. "Just a friendly proposition," Dalen said, spreading his hands in a gesture of peace. "How about you stop your broadcasts of those divine tales and save us all a lot of unnecessary trouble?" The commander's eyes narrowed, suspicion oozing from every pore. "And why would we do that?" "Because," Dalen replied, "the rebels you're fighting are actually on your side. They just want the luminaries to stop using those tales to manipulate the masses. Think of it as a call for unity rather than a directive for domination." Beside him, Tull snorted. "Yeah, Cumbaya and all that cosmic jazz. We shut down the Superlacer," Zara added, her tone serious. "There's no point in continuing this mess. Let's talk peace." The commander stared at them, his expression shifting from anger to contemplation, as if he just realized he might be holding the wrong end of the stick. "You propose a ceasefire?" he asked, the words tasting foreign on his tongue. "More than that," Dalen said, leaning forward to emphasize his point. "A chance to rewrite the narrative, humans and aliens working together. We dismantle the luminaries' power play, and in return, well, maybe we all get a shot at not destroying each other." "Pretend we're not all homicidal maniacs for a day," Tull interjected. "You know, for novelty's sake." The commander hesitated, the tension in the room so thick you could slice it with a laser. It was a gamble, a wild shot in the dark, but then again, they had nothing left to lose. "Fine," the commander finally said, his tone grudgingly accepting. "We'll suspend our broadcasts and cease hostilities while we discuss your proposal." Dalen felt a rush of relief, the kind that comes when you've successfully defused a bomb with seconds to spare. "Thank you," he said, genuine gratitude in his voice. "Let's make sure this isn't just the beginning of another mess." The comms link ended, leaving Dalen and his team standing in the control room, the silence a stark contrast to the chaos that had reigned moments before. "Did we just pull off a miracle?" Zara asked, a disbelieving grin spreading across her face. "Either that or we're in for the biggest backstab of our lives," Tull replied, though the glimmer of hope in his eyes belied his words. "Zephyr, keep monitoring the situation," Dalen instructed, a cautious optimism settling over him. "We need to be ready for anything." "As always, Captain," Zephyr replied, her holographic form flickering with anticipation. With the Superlacer deactivated and the Luminaries' fleet agreeing to a ceasefire, the threat of immediate annihilation had receded. But Dalen knew this was just one battle in a much larger, infinitely more complex war. "We've still got a long road ahead," Dalen said, his voice firm. "But today, at least, we proved that when push comes to shove, we can do more than just survive. We can change the game. Here's to humanity," Tull said, raising an imaginary glass, "and to making the impossible possible." Zara chuckled, joining in the imaginary toast. "And to the weirdest team-building exercise in history." The control room echoed with their laughter, a sound both defiant and hopeful. It wasn't the end, far from it, but it was a step in the right direction. A step toward a future where humans and aliens might just find common ground, even if it was only to avoid mutual destruction. As they stood amidst the blinking lights and humming consoles, Dalen couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. His team, a motley crew of cynics and pragmatists, had managed to pull off the impossible. They'd taken a leap of faith, and for now, at least, they'd landed on solid ground. "All right," Dalen said, clapping his hands together. "Let's get to work. We've got a new galaxy to build." With renewed determination, they turned back to their consoles, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. It wasn't the end of the story, but it was a damn good chapter, one that promised hope, change, and maybe, just maybe, a future worth fighting for. The control room of Helios Spire was more of a madhouse than a peaceful sanctuary. People were buzzing around like space flies, each with their own mission, critical to ensuring they didn't end up as a footnote in some alien history book. Dalen Voss stood at the center, trying to look like he had everything under control, despite feeling like he was holding a live eel with his bare hands. "So, we didn't die today. That's a start," Dalen quipped, more to himself than anyone else. The room still hummed with the energy of the recent chaos they had narrowly avoided, much like the aftermath of a particularly raucous bar fight, but with fewer broken noses. "Small blessings," Tull chimed in, slinging his plasma rifle over his shoulder. "I guess that means it's safe to put the insurance claims on hold." "Save him for next week," Zara added, still tapping away at the console with a speed that suggested caffeine was a vital part of her diet. The aftermath of their little negotiation with the luminaries felt like the calm after a storm, or the eerie silence before someone realized they hadn't brought any extra ammunition. Dalen looked around, the weight of the recent events settling on him. Sure, they'd bought themselves some time, but let's face it, time was about as trustworthy as a drunk uncle at a family reunion. "Zephyr," Dalen called. The AI holographic cube shimmered into view, data still trickling across her surface like a digital waterfall. "Any news from Irid's merry band of misfits?" "Reports indicate that Irid's forces are holding up well. The luminaries are reconsidering their position," Zephyr said, her voice laced with an odd mix of pride and skepticism, the kind you'd reserve for a dog that finally learned not to pee on the carpet. Dalen snorted. "Let's hope reconsidering doesn't translate to planning our funerals." "Always the optimist," Tull said dryly, peering over his shoulder with a grin that suggested he'd already decided who'd get his stuff if they bought the farm. "Look, if we're going to be building a brighter future," Dalen continued, "we might as well start by not getting shot at the moment we step outside." "Sounds like a solid plan," Zara replied, closing down one of her screens with a flourish. "And here I thought we specialized in half-baked schemes and reckless gambles." "Desperate times call for desperate nonsense," Dalen replied, rubbing tired eyes. "But let's focus on not being cosmic dust first, shall we?" The facility shuddered again, but this time it was more like the aftershock of a bad joke than a prelude to obliteration. Outside, the sunflowers of the solar farm stretched toward the green sky, their metallic petals shimmering in the poisonous hue, a scene both surreal and oddly beautiful. "So what do we do with this place now?" Tull asked, pointing at the superlaser controls now as useful as a chocolate teapot. Dalen sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Turn it into something that doesn't involve exploding planets, preferably." "How about a theme park?" Zara suggested with a smirk. "We could charge admission. Come see the place where humans almost got vaporized." "Catchy," Dalen said. "But I was thinking more along the lines of a symbol of peace, something inspirational," Tull chuckled. "Inspirational, right? Because if there's one thing folks love, it's a good story about not dying in a spectacular way." "Hey," Zara said, "we're living proof that humans can talk their way out of anything. Even their own funerals," Tull agreed, shaking his head. As they bantered, Dalen found himself contemplating the power of stories and myths. It was those damn divine tales that had gotten them into this mess in the first place. A bunch of space fables spun by the luminaries to control, to dominate. Maybe it was time for a new narrative, one where humans weren't the cosmic underdogs but partners in something bigger. Zephyr, Dalen said, turning to the AI, compile everything we've got on luminary propaganda. I want to know exactly what they've been feeding the galaxy. Already on it, Zephyr replied, the digital waterfall of her holographic form shifting to display a cascade of alien symbols and human translations. It's a mix of religious rhetoric, historical revisionism, and creative reinterpretation of facts. So, standard politics, Tull said, unimpressed. Pretty much, Dalen agreed, studying the data. But if we can turn their stories on their head, show people the truth, maybe we can change the game. Good luck with that, Zara said, rolling her eyes. Changing hearts and minds is a lot harder than blowing things up. Trust me, I've tried. And yet here we are, Dalen said, gesturing around him. Beacons of hope and optimism in a galaxy of cynics. You mean idiots with a death wish, Tull muttered, though he couldn't hide the smile tugging at his lips. Same difference, Dalen replied. But we've got a shot at something better. Helios Spire could be more than just the site of our latest miracle. It could be the start of a real partnership between humans and aliens. Great, Zara said, her fingers flying over the keys. Next thing you know, we'll be doing trust falls with luminary commanders, Dalen snorted. One step at a time, Zara. One step at a time. As the hours passed, the team worked tirelessly, repurposing Helios Spire from a death machine into a symbol of interstellar peace. It was a project born out of necessity, driven by the simple desire not to end up as debris in the vast emptiness of space. Think anyone will appreciate what we're doing here? Tull asked, clambering over a tangle of wires as they rerouted power away from the dormant superlaser. Probably not, Dalen admitted. But it's not about appreciation. It's about changing the narrative. If we can show even one alien species that humans aren't just trigger-happy maniacs, that's a win. Not just aliens, Zara added. Plenty of humans out there could use a reminder that we're not the center of the universe. Preach, Tull said, tossing a spanner to Zara, who caught it without looking. And if this all goes sideways, we can at least say we tried. I hear that's worth something in the afterlife. Guess we'll find out, Dalen said, though he hoped it wouldn't come to that anytime soon. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the green sky in hues of sickly twilight, Dalen took a moment to step outside onto the observation deck. The metal sunflowers of the solar farm glinted in the fading light, their petals now more like shields than weapons. He felt a sense of strange serenity, hardly something he was used to in this line of work. Maybe it was the knowledge that for the first time in a long time, they weren't just reacting to threats but actually shaping their own destiny, however precarious it might be. Deep thoughts, Tull asked, joining him on the deck with the subtlety of a freight train. Just thinking about how far we've come, Dalen replied, not taking his eyes off the horizon. And how far we still have to go, Tull nodded, leaning against the railing. If you told me a year ago that we'd be turning a weapon of mass destruction into a peace monument, I'd have asked what drugs you were on. I'm as surprised as you are, Dalen admitted. But here we are, rewriting the script. Hope the galaxy's ready for it, Tull said. Because we're not exactly known for our tact and diplomacy. No, but we are known for our stubbornness, Dalen replied with a wry smile. And that's got to count for something. With that, they stood in silence, watching as the stars slowly emerged in the darkening sky, a reminder of the vastness and mystery that lay beyond. For once, it felt like they had a chance, an opportunity to make a difference, however small. And in a universe that seemed hell-bent on its own destruction, that was something worth fighting for. Back inside, the team continued their work, driven by a newfound purpose. Helios Spire was no longer just a relic of human ambition and folly. It was a testament to resilience, to change, and maybe, just maybe, to hope. Are we ready for this? Zara asked as they gathered around the central console, the room buzzing with anticipation. As ready as we'll ever be, Dalen said, his voice steady. We've got a lot of work ahead, but if we pull this off, we'll have done something incredible. Yeah, Tull agreed. And if it all goes to hell, well, at least we'll go out with one hell of a story. Not just a story, Dalen corrected. A legend. With that, they set to work, determined to forge a future that was more than just survival, more than just a series of desperate gambits. They were creating something new, a chance for humanity to prove that it could be more than just another cosmic footnote. And in the end, maybe that was the greatest story of all.